video, we're going to be talking about something called thermal conductivity. The definition of thermal conductivity is the rate at which a substance conducts thermal energy. So how well can it conduct the energy through the substance itself? So we talked a little bit about this without actually using the term when we talked about metals and nonmetals first semester. So conductors have a high thermal conductivity because they can conduct well, and insulators have a low thermal conductivity because they can't pass that energy through that object. Something that you should have seen got brought up with when we compared our heat and temperature and thermal energy was the term specific heat capacity. The definition of specific heat capacity is the amount of energy needed to change the temperature of 1 kilogram of substance by 1 degree Celsius. So depending on the substance, you're going to have a different specific heat capacity. If it takes a lot of energy to raise your substance's temperature by 1 degree Celsius, then it's going to have a higher specific heat capacity. If it takes less energy, it's going to have a smaller specific heat capacity. So different substances are going to change by different temperatures when given the same amount of energy based on what they're made of. So not every object has the same specific heat capacity. One thing before we move on to the heat part is that specific heat capacity of water is 1. That is a base that we set. Now we've talked about heat, but just to touch on it here again in relation to specific heat capacity, when we're calculating the energy that's transferred between the objects, because we know that's the definition of heat itself, it's helpful to define heat as that energy between the two objects at different temperatures. So we've talked about that. So we can calculate this with our specific heat capacity, our mass, and our change in temperature. All we have to do is multiply the three things together. So heat equals specific heat capacity times mass times the change in temperature that's happening. And then because it's talking about energy, we express this in joules. So I would write this down in your equation sheet. It's definitely going to come up in the future.